Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very excited to be moderating this panel. We have three brilliant women here who are all social entrepreneurs and innovators, all working in their own way to engage grassroots communities around the issue of climate change. I'll give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves and say a little bit about them. A little bit about themselves and what they do. We'll start with Yoca Arditi. Yoca is the co-executive director of the CLEO Institute, where she works with the CLEO staff to drive climate action through community engagement and education. Yoca, you're involved with CLEO and also the Florida Climate Pledge. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and the Institute and the Climate Pledge and what they're doing to accelerate solutions.
It's not working. Oh, there we go. Well, thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank the Bolo Foundation and UCF for hosting this, what has been a fantastic conference so far. I am the executive director of the CLEO Institute, which is a nonprofit based in Miami, Florida, that focuses on building climate literacy. And we focus on engagement as well as advocacy, trying to really look for sustainable solutions for a resilient future. We've been in Miami for 9.5 years, founded by Caroline Lewis, a science teacher that when started getting information from the scientific community about the state of our climate, really got empowered to do her best, which is to teach others about the climate science and in hope to reverse global warming. Fast forward 9.5 years later, we're still at it. We focus on a top-bottom approach, and we really synthesize climate science-based information for a variety of audiences. We work with the academia sector. We go into schools and universities. We also work with municipalities and the private sector, and we work with underserved communities as well in Miami-Dade County. I should tell you that about 50% of the population in Miami-Dade County is considered working poor. So they struggle to really meet their basic needs. So we have quite a big of a large vulnerable community in Miami-Dade County. So some of the ways that we do that is through a variety of established programs from our Climate 101s, which are basic programs where we really synthesize, like I said, those the scientific information to really understand the complexity of climate change and everything that really affects. We do focus trainings as well and workshops. It really depends on the audience, but we go into homeowners associations, faith-based organizations, like I said, private and public sectors, and we really focus on making it understandable for everybody. We know those are complex terms, and there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, so it's important in a very scientific manner to explain these complex issues. We also focus on influencing policy change decisions, and we are an example of that is a recent report, which is that we just released with the Center for American Progress, which is called the Florida Future Fund, which we heard today from Catherine Hayhoe, how vulnerable our infrastructure is in our country, and how, that vulnerability it's really seen across our state. And we're proposing a new fund scheme, low-interest fund scheme, to really fund those resiliency projects that are going to get our cities to be future-ready. So to focus on building the tree canopy, to focus on energy efficiency, to really implement clean energy systems, and to really try to get our state to in the face of a warming world. We have actually a couple of new projects in place right now. One is modeled out of the Project Drawdown. I was excited to see Chad to present today, because one one of our recent programs is based on solution number 6 and 7, which is educating women and girls. And we have, we implemented a pilot in one of our most underserved communities in Miami-Dade, where we are focusing on empowering resilient women. And our focus is to train women, educate women, help them to be better prepared for extreme weather events, to be ready for hurricanes and heat wave events, to really teach them to be civically engaged at a city and community level, and at the same time get those leadership skills needed to become the change agents women are known to be. Women are, as we know, or as you should know, women are very disproportionately more vulnerable to climate change impacts, but at the same time, they can be those great change agents. They're the first responders in crisis in a community. They're the ones getting the supplies. They're the ones taking care of our elderly and our children. So it's important to empower them to really create those resilient communities in the face of a warming world. I really don't want to go into too much detail, but to go into the Florida Climate Pledge, that since you asked me about that, that is a collaboration effort that we have across the state to try to build the public will and to try to help citizens and Florida residents to understand those top voter concerns, which David actually quite explained this morning, to try to connect the impacts of climate change to those top voter concerns. So if you didn't get a chance to go to the expo, we have some reference material that really connects those top voter concerns to climate change impacts. So we talk about the economy and climate change impacts. We talk about the health impact. We talk about the national security impact and displacement impacts in our state, as well as all the biodiversity impacts. So all those top voter concerns related to climate change is what the Florida Climate Pledge is trying to accomplish. We're nonpartisan. We're really education-based. So this campaign is looking to continuously educate Floridians to, in hope that we get them civically engaged to be able to make those right decisions at the time that those decisions need to be made, for example, in November, this coming November. So we are actually doing a series of billboards released all over the states that clearly connects those topics. We have billboards out on the west coast of Florida, in Fort Myers and Naples, in the Tampa Bay area, in St. Petersburg, here in Orlando, in Miami-Dade County, and soon in West Palm Beach and in the Jacksonville area, that connects some of the major specific environmental problems that are happening in those regions. In Orlando, we were focusing on the Puerto Rican diaspora and the Hurricane Maria impacts. In the West Coast, we're focusing on the blue-green algae. In South Florida, we're focusing on extreme weather winds and hurricane impacts. So we try to make that connection for people so people understand that a warming planet is having tremendous impact and catastrophic events all around us.
Thank you so much, Yoca. Next, I'm going to introduce Kristin Van Busum. Kristin is the founder of Project Alianza. And Kristin, in 2014, when you started, you had a broad vision to improve the lives and the futures of rural youth in Central America through providing education. And this is a population that faces some of the worst impacts of climate change. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Alianza and how your vision has come to life and how you connect the mission of education with the realities of climate change?
Yes. So before I share a little bit more about myself, I would like to see how many people here have had a cup of coffee today. Keep your hand up. And for those with their hand up, how many of you would consider yourself sort of like a lover of coffee or a bit of an addict of coffee? Okay, so still the majority of people here. And I definitely fall in the latter of the camps. I'm sort of an addict and lover of coffee. And that's really where my social entrepreneurship journey began. So I ended up taking a research fellowship to learn more about access to coffee markets, and that research journey led me to Nicaragua. And I lived on 3 large coffee estates to complete this research project. This was back in 2014. And a lot surprised me in the coffee lands, a lot surprised me in Nicaragua, but what really shocked me was every single farm and every single farming community I visited, I saw hundreds of children that weren't going to school. And that concerned me on a moral level, but then I began to investigate further and became more concerned. So what was happening was children are growing up on these large coffee farms, and their family's been reliant on this crop for 4 or 5 generations, and they're not getting to school because the nearest public school is often a 3-hour walk on a long, dangerous road. And those who are lucky enough to get to school, chances are their building's dangerous, the teacher's not trained, and they don't have basic resources like pencils and paper, and chances are they're not getting a meal that day. So there's no incentive for these children to get to school. So Project Alianza was founded, or I founded Project Alianza as a result of seeing children facing these physical and socio-political barriers for not getting to school. So what we do as an organization is we partner with private farms. Right now we're focused on coffee, and we mobilize farmers, we put in our share, and then we involve the community and government to provide education for children in these climate vulnerable communities. So Chris, what's really important is linking this, is showing you all this intersection between the importance of education, in particular within these poor and climate vulnerable communities, and how these, and the challenges these children are going to be facing. So a short-term tangible example of this is, has anybody here heard of La Roya? Or
Yes.
yes, coffee, do you know what that is? Coffee rust?
Roya Maria?
Yeah, I think it's called, I think it's called that.
It's a disease.
Yeah. So it's a fungus that grew on coffee plants, and it destroyed coffee throughout Central America, and it's linked to changes in weather patterns. So there was a lot of rainfall followed by a lot of drought, and many farmers and coffee pickers were left without a job. So when household income goes down, children are oftentimes pulled out of school. So we found that if school is accessible, if children have some short-term incentive to be there, like getting a safe place to go for the day, a free meal, free health care, and if there's some sort of long-term benefit, like if we invest in our children today, they'll help increase our family income tomorrow, children go to school. Even when there's political instability, even when there's crises happening at a community level, children stay in school if school is something consistent and reliable for them. So that's the sort of security that Project Alianza provides children in these vulnerable communities. And what's really terrifying is in the next 30 years, we're going to see the fertile growing area for coffee slashed in half. So we're talking 4 generations of people that have been reliant on this crop, aren't going to have education, they're not going to have any economic opportunities. So what's going to happen is children are going to, their best options are going to be joining gangs. This is something we see all over El Salvador. They're going to join the drug trade. This is something we see in Mexico. They're going to be victims of slave labor, of human trafficking. This has been reported on in the coffee lands of Brazil. Or they're going to become refugees. This is something we're seeing in Nicaragua, where Project Alianza works. So there is this important intersection between communities that are going to be affected by the changing climate and the importance of investing in youth to give them opportunities to address these challenges and giving them the skills they need to adapt to their changing world and their changing reality. So that's how we step up to support children within these communities. And today we're focused on coffee, but we see opportunities for working in other agricultural communities throughout Latin America in the future.
Thank you, Kristin. Next, I'm going to introduce Chandra Farley. Did I pronounce that right?
It's Chandra.
Chandra, I'm sorry. Chandra Farley. Chandra is the Just Energy Director at the Partnership for Southern Equity. And Chandra, your work is all about making renewable energy available to diverse populations, including both commercial and residential consumers. And you're a great proponent of informing people about their choices. Can you tell us more about how this company and this project is scaling solutions towards reducing our carbon footprint?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks everyone for being here today. Thanks to the Volo Foundation and UCF. Again, my name is Chandra Farley. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I work for Partnership for Southern Equity. I think it's always interesting, as director of Just Energy, I am often confused with a actual private equity firm company called Just Energy. We would love some of that money if there are people from there in the room. But Partnership for Southern Equity is a nonprofit. We focus on racial equity and shared prosperity in metropolitan Atlanta and across the American South. We work across 3 focus areas. Just Energy is the work that I lead, which is our energy equity and climate justice work. We focus on economic inclusion, which we refer to as Just Opportunity, which is all about wealth building and economic inclusion. And we focus on Just Growth, which is equitable development, which is where we focus on green infrastructure, water equity, transit-oriented development, and ensuring that renewable energy and the developments that it can bring with it aren't intentionally displacing low-income and vulnerable populations. So we work across these 3 focus areas, and I focus again on the energy equity, climate justice aspect. And Partnership for Southern Equity, our theory of change is based on a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, actually, that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. And we work to build an equity ecosystem across the South where various actors all have equal roles to play in advancing racial equity and shared prosperity for all people. When one group does well, all groups do well. So focused on making sure race, income, and zip code are not barriers to prosperity that can come with renewable energy development, access to clean energy opportunities, economic advancement, and development advancement. The ways that we do our work are focused on community engagement, community participation. I draw a sharp line between those 2 things. Community engagement is often a box checker for cities, municipalities, and governments. We get people in a room, we tell them what we need them to hear, and we check that box and we move on with our plans. Partnership for Southern Equity really focuses on, yes, community engagement, but also community participation and activation. So making sure that we are educating communities, working alongside with communities, and that those most impacted, and operating under the belief and truth that those most impacted have the answers for their communities and should be leading as the frontline communities that they are. We also focus on leadership development. So we develop a number of leadership development programs across our issue circles. So the issue circle is another component, if you will, of our equity ecosystem. So we have a Just Energy Circle, which is a coalition of organizations, including subject matter experts around energy, renewable energy, energy policy, around the table with community-based organizations, grassroots organizations, to vision and work on more equitable energy policy, community education together. So it really sort of mashes up these two groups that often aren't in rooms together. So we are moving forward, and we co-develop a lot of the leadership development trainings. So we have instituted a Transformation Academy, which is a partnership with the Transformation Alliance in Atlanta, Georgia, which focuses on equitable transit-oriented development. And we will be launching a Just Energy Academy in early 2019, which will be focusing on educating residents on energy planning and decision making. We do a lot of education about the Public Service Commission in Georgia. That is an elected body. So we've been doing a lot of work around voting and voter education, basically saying, hey, don't forget the Public Service Commission. These are the people that are making decisions about your electricity rates, your natural gas rates, and there are things in Georgia happening with Plant Vogtle, the nuclear power plant, and a lot of folks just have no idea that they have been paying for things like this for 10 years. We do utility bill readings so they understand that there's a line item on their, the different line items on their bill, and also understanding what the resources and program opportunities are through utilities around energy efficiency and weatherization to help them advocate and participate in programs that can help them lower their bills. So we are really focused on the education and leadership development aspect of communities to make sure that they are self-informed and first-person advocates for their communities on their own behalf. Instead of situations that are similar to sort of a campaign based modality, we value big relationships just as much as we value big data, and that the true systems transformation that we are looking for will only happen through big relationships where people trust each other enough to sit around the table with each other and vision more equitable policy and energy development and economics. I think our biggest initiative that we are about to jump into right now is work around Atlanta's 100% clean energy plan. So Atlanta is one of almost 80 cities now around the United States that have made a commitment to transition to 100% clean and clean electricity, actually, in Atlanta. And we are partnering with the city through an initiative called the 100% Renewable and Equitable Cities Initiative. So we're one of 3 cities in partnership with Race Forward, funded by a number of foundations, who are working with our city governments around ensuring that transitions to 100% clean and renewable energy or electricity are truly equitable. So we will be, and how do we do that? What are some best practices? So we're really excited about bringing community members we've educated around the table, community leaders, faith leaders, and influencers to work alongside with the city to ensure that, okay, that's great, we're gonna have a Solarize campaign. Okay, that's great. I think somebody mentioned earlier that you're gonna get a 60%, discount on the rebate. Okay, that's great. What do we do about the folks that can't afford the 40% upfront cost already, who really stand to benefit from 30 to 40% lower electricity bills through solar installation? So we're looking at some things about working on a low-income renewable energy pilot, more training and education around workforce development, around energy efficiency and solar installation. And we talk a lot about jobs, but we will also be talking about what are the business ownership and entrepreneurship opportunities, especially those who may be returning from serving sentences or time, who may not be able to take advantage of these jobs because of some of the application barriers with offenders that have returned to society. So those are some of the ways that we are trying to make sure that energy, renewable energy, and the transition to a renewable energy economy first and foremost focuses on those that have the most to benefit.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank all of you for those great introductions. So I think for my first question, we've heard a lot today about technology development. We've heard a lot about policy at an institutional level. The three of you and your organizations are really engaging communities directly. Can you talk a little bit about the significant challenges, what some of the biggest hurdles you face in going out there into these communities and really engaging them on climate change, kind of getting them ready to act, and how you kind of overcome those particular challenges. Start with Yoca.
Thanks, Chris. So I guess at a community level, I would say that the biggest hurdle is the lack of information and education in a lot of these communities. And I think that's where the apathy comes from. The fact that a lot of communities do not understand, first of all, the complexity of the problem. Some of them feel that it may not affect them, at least not in the near future. Some of them have not made that connection that we spoke about earlier, that things that are really important to them are really being affected by a warming world. So in general, I think the lack of education is really the biggest hurdle to really get the public to engage more actively in advocating for solutions in general.
Kristin?
Sure. So I would say our biggest hurdle has, and I was trying to think of something sort of general because we work in such a particular international context, has really, is realizing that we're always, when we go into a new community, we're working with skeptics. Anytime somebody comes to you and is selling you something, it's healthy to be a little bit skeptical. And in particular, because we're working in vulnerable communities, many of the people that we're working with have never been part of a trustworthy system. So, their food has never been consistent, their source of income has never been consistent, their government has never been consistent for them. So we realize that there's always this healthy level of skepticism, and even though we're offering something that should be a net positive for the community, we're offering an investment in education for youth, which should transform the community in a positive way. There's still a lot of people that aren't jumping on to engage with us, and that's reasonable. I think that they're acting rationally. So our way of, I guess, addressing that hurdle has been to have a multi-stakeholder approach. Not to, we're a 501c3 registered in the United States, and we recognize that if we're imposing our North American values in a different cultural context, we're not going to be effective. So we engage with the private sector at a local level, community leaders at a local level, parents, students themselves, and all of our ideas and initiatives are generated from the bottom up. So therefore, it's part of a cultural shift. It's not a program implementation. And I think that that's the way that change can happen here at UCF. If you're a student trying to mobilize something, you shouldn't be a single student group trying to do it. It should be mobilized through various stakeholders. If you're trying to make organizational change, it needs to come from employees and leaders and from all angles. So I think that's a valuable lesson for any of us trying to disrupt the status quo, is engaging as many players as possible.
Yep, I agree. PSE also, the whole point of this equity ecosystem that we are developing is that you do have that multi-demographic, multi-stakeholder approach. I think one of the big challenges, I think, we're all clear about it, is really people who are most burdened being able to step out and see themselves as part of the solution. These issues, are so large, they're so complex. So we do, I think one of the things that we are trying to do, I don't think that, this is a challenge that we deal with all the time, really is, first, what is our follow-up strategy? So when we do go into communities on that engagement sort of step one, what is the next step? So we're trying to really work on what our follow-up strategy is. How do we maintain engagement from community who, maybe can't make the meeting, at night, who, providing childcare, when we have meetings, offering them at different times. And the cultural competency work is very important. And first and foremost, PSC, we operate from shared values and shared vision. So we might be bringing people together around the table to discuss a particular issue, but once we get everybody in the room to talk about that issue, we really shift the conversation to one of what are our values and what are our visions. So we do take the time to give people the space to step out of the problems, right? To what are some of the solutions. Demonstration projects is, something that I also think is very important, so people can really see and touch what it means to address climate change, or to have a more efficient building, or have a more healthy building. So those are some of the ways we're trying to battle that challenge. I think we're learning all the time and trying lots of different things. Different communities require different approaches.
Thank you all. Those are excellent responses. And all right. So my next question for you all is to, as you look at your organizations and what you're doing today, what are some of the ideas and sort of innovations you have in mind that you'd like to kind of move towards in the future? When you kind of think creatively about what you want maybe your organizations or your programs to look like going forward.
So I guess when looking into the future, and we're currently in our strategic planning at the CLEO Institute, we're looking at, and I think all of us have the same model approach, which is involving having that top, bottom, top approach of involving all the entire, all the stakeholders to the conversation, because I think it's crucial for transformational change to involve everybody. And for us, education is a huge component of that. We are in the midst of making sure in our region, we narrow down the partisan gap that has really halted our country for so many years. And we've been doing that in a nonpartisan approach, having conversations from both sides of the party, into really educating policymakers and talking about science. We come with a very neutral approach. We try to sit at the table with both, listen to them, listen to both actually, and try to come on to some middle of the road consensus and agreement. And in South Florida, we're starting to see, not only because of us, but we're starting to see that partisan gap really narrow down. We have members of Congress from both sides of the political party advocating for climate change solutions. In fact, we have two major congressional races right now in Miami-Dade County, and both candidates are talking openly about climate change and sea level rise. So yes, Mother Nation has been sending loud and clear signals to our region, and one of them, being sunny day flooding. It's really hard to try to cover the real life evidence, but education has taken a huge part of that. We have been hosting mayoral roundtables for 9 years, where we bring mayors from all over the county. We sit them together to just have conversation and hear what every single major is doing. We bring the ones that are more seasoned versus the ones that are not so engaged and have them had lunch together and have them discuss of what's working for them and what's not working. And some of them are working and what it's, they're planning to do but cannot do. So we try to be connectors in that way. And our hope is to be able to actually have our mayors go through an intensive climate training and talking to drawdown to be able to implement that. And that's why I mentioned this morning that yesterday we delivered books to all of them in our county. And are trying to continuously educate them. And we do this also with commissioners and candidates, both at the state level and the city level. So we want to amplify education and elected officials for one. Then the other thing is that we work heavily in the with underserved communities in our county, and from the climate justice perspective, we have been working with several communities that are facing climate gentrification in our area, and we are. Like I mentioned, we instituted this pilot that we hope to scale up and bring to more communities in Miami-Dade County, because we know that these communities are disproportionately being impacted by climate-related issues. I mean, we saw it in Miami-Dade County last year and the year before with Zika virus scares in those communities. They're suffering, heat impacts. There's climate gentrification, people being phased out of their homes because of developers coming in and trying to phase them out or increase rent. And we have a housing crisis issue in our county. So what we're trying to do in these communities is to educate them, empower them, engage them, and give them the leadership skills they needed so they can, sit at the table and demand solutions from their city and municipal leaders. So we want to engage those communities as well, because really, social justice and climate justice is one of the same. So, and additionally, an ambitious goal that we're pursuing is to try to incorporate a mandatory climate 101 course in Miami-Dade School District. And we're in conversations with that. We know it's ambitious, but this is actually a student-led initiative from one of our summer programs that came up with the idea, and the conversation is moving along. So perhaps, in our region, we'll have the first mandatory climate change mandatory course in the region, and hopefully that will be something that could be replicated in other counties. And lastly but not least, we're looking to implement a pilot project in Liberty City, which is a very low-income community in our county, using their high school as a resilience hub with solar and storage as a pilot for other school shelters in our region. So those are a few of the things that we're looking into in the next couple of years.
I'll share a couple programs that we're working on in the future. So going forward, like I said, right now we're heavily focused on coffee, because coffee communities are going to change drastically over the next 30 years as the climate's changing. So we are looking into what other agricultural communities would benefit from the type of education model that we've implemented in our coffee communities. So we're looking particularly within Latin America and communities that are focused around sugarcane, cashew, cacao, and replicating, like I said, replicating the model that we've successfully implemented in 16 communities in Nicaragua right now. And also, for those of you who are here this morning, you understand the importance of investing in women and girls. So we have a program that supports girls that can go on to higher education that come out of our communities. And we realize that scholarships aren't enough, so we provide mentorship for the entire family as she continues on her educational journey. And another program that we've actually been working on with the help of Volo has centered around hiring local women who are underemployed to provide, to act as facilitators in the classroom, to enhance literacy and life skills that's lacking for children within these communities. And we invest and employ local women so they have more professional employment opportunities within their community to enhance the quality of education.
I would say I'm thinking Vision 2020 right now. It's crazy to be thinking about that. But I would say stepping up our education, as Yoca meant, is paramount, and making sure that our communities are ready to lead and informed on the issues. So when they are at the table, they are informed with their demands and what they expect from those in seats of power. And the second thing I would say for sure is, in addition to developing those community leaderships and educating, we're really intentionally focused now. It goes back to the follow-up strategy, but what does the leadership development pipeline look like in the energy and the climate space? So we talk often about what happens when we have someone that comes to our Energy Equity 101, which we call More Money, More Power. And they get a spark and they're interested and they heard about the Public Service Commission. Okay, well, then maybe they come to our biennial Just Energy Summit, which we just hosted in September. We had over 300 practitioners, community members, and we were intentional that we wanted the ratio for that summit to be 70% community to 30% practitioner. We talk to each other a lot, but we need to be in more conversation with those that we would like to partner with to change our shared condition. So stepping up our education, continuing with leadership development and trying to develop what that leadership development pipeline looks like. Maybe that person that came to our last Energy 101 in March goes on to run for the Public Service Commission, in 6 years from now. And then one other piece for sure is what more can we do? We're talking about directing capital investment. So when we talk about solar energy, renewable energy pilot projects, this is really something that we are going to be pushing for in our work around the 100% clean energy plan in Atlanta. What does it look like to model a renewable energy or solar development project in a lower income community in Atlanta? There's been a lot of data work done in Atlanta, so we now have a picture of the 6 zip codes out of 23 or so in the city of Atlanta that pay a higher portion of their utility bills than the other 20 or so zip codes. So we are going to be really focused on directing any capital investment that is coming into the city or committed to the city of Atlanta to focus on relieving the burdens in those zip codes. And I would say the next thing is research and reporting. Our organization has done a lot of research in partnership with organizations like PolicyLink, which is a national nonprofit that focuses on equity as well, and honing our focus in our focus region, which is the Southeast, specifically around energy equity. We've done a lot of work around transportation. We've done a lot of work around economic inclusion. So we'll really be stepping up our research and reporting efforts, again, specifically around the 100% clean energy plan. I keep mentioning that a lot because it is all encompassing of energy, climate, economics, and development. So this is really an opportunity for us to model what can happen when we make a concerted effort to get it right.
Great. All right, so we're have a few minutes left. We've got a lot of young people here today, and I think one of the common themes I've heard is there's a lot of interest, energy, enthusiasm, particularly among young people around climate and the environment, but oftentimes they're just not sure what they can do to make to have a big impact. So maybe each of you can speak a little bit about what you would tell someone maybe graduating college or around that time in their life about what they can do, concrete steps or actions they can do to help make a difference and help be part of the solution.
I'm going to say what I tell my teenage daughter to do. The first thing she needs to do is to go vote. And that's something that we encourage. We have a youth ambassador program, and we always encourage them to use the power of their vote, the power of their voice, and the power of the purse. So I think for younger generations, it's crucial to be civically engaged, and we encourage millennials specifically now to be to use the power of the vote, the purse, and the power of their voice as well. So I think to us is really crucial. I think we always say we need to do something now for future generations, and I like to say no, we need to do now for the generations now, not for the future. Yes, we want to be able to sustain future generations, but I think also we need to focus on the generations now. So for us, it's crucial to get them civically engaged, and so those are the three mandatory things that I ask our youth followers to do.
I echo 100% everything Yoca said. Also, from the perspective of a leader of a nonprofit, I think it's critical that each of us has something that fuels our soul, and to pick that cause and to pick that topic and stick with it. Yeah. Commit to an organization that you believe in, and volunteer your professional skills, donate your dollar, invest in a nonprofit or an organization that you believe in for the long run. Don't do a 2-month project and leave. Stick with it for a few years, and you'll help that organization expand their mission as well. So I'll add that little cherry on top of what you said.
Ditto. Pour yourself into the civic engagement infrastructure. Everyone is waiting on you. Everyone is waiting on us. Just do it. Sorry, but it's that basic. Like, get in there, jump in there, whatever your passion is. If you're curious about something, there are all kinds of organizations that are hungry for hungry people. If you can learn so much about filing and answering the phone, and just raising your hand. So I think it's important to just jump in there. There's absolutely nothing to stop you. And I would say when you're thinking about climate, and energy, is the point of this conference. But I think that this gathering has done a really good job of looking at the holistic nature of what we are facing. And we need architects, we need economists, we need writers, we need musicians, we need all hands on deck to change the course that we are facing right now. So whatever it is, just get in there and throw yourself into it. Yeah. And vote, and take your friends.
And vote.
And vote.
And vote.
Excellent. Well, looks like we're at the end of our time, but this has been a great panel. Thank all three of you for your time and for your insights. And this is and vote.
And vote. And if I may, I wanted to, something I forgot to mention today, if I'd like to invite all of you to look at the Florida Climate Pledge website. I think it's filled with wonderful information regarding all the topics that we've been discussing here today. So if you don't mind, you have some homework to do. It's floridaclimatepledge.org. And if you want some of those informational sheets, we have them at the expo. So thank you again for the invitation, and for the Bolo Foundation and for UCF for having us. Thank you.